Hi, welcome to another edition of In the Metal. You're very welcome, and it's great to have you along as we go on our journey, our odyssey to explore all the corners of independent watchmaking in the 21st century. And this week we will be going to a company that is based in Switzerland, and my goodness, do they take that identity of a Swiss made seriously. Everything manufactured in-house, components, materials, all sourced locally. And so we're looking forward to discovering the world of Zeitwinkel, a brand that was established in 2006. We are joined tonight by one of the co-founders, is Albert Edelmann. And so that will be in one moment. In the meantime, I would like to welcome and go across to Gun Barrel City in Texas and say greetings. Let's see that, man. Gun Barrel City limits, man.
What's really, hey Johnny, how you doing? What's really messed up is they found this in the attic of my house.
Oh no, right? The feds are on their way, man. You know, the feds are on their way for that.
Somebody that lived here before was doing some thieving around the neighborhood.
A city called Gun Barrel City. The day that Dan Spitz moved in, they're saying, well, there goes the neighborhood.
Pretty much you're on target with that one. Yep. I mean, what could be like a better place for a former metal dude to build timepieces than Gun Barrel City, Texas?
It's just made for you, it's made for you. So it's
no, all good here. All good here, Johnny. We're getting finally real close to hanging lights and doing electrical in my new workshops, and ending the beginning phases of construction here. So I can finally unpack after 3 months and set up machines and get back going to what I do best, man. And pounding the bench and TikTok, bro.
Happy days. You must be just really looking forward to powering everything up, getting those machines humming perfectly, and
I'm jonesing like a crack addict without his pipe. Pretty much.
Yeah. That's a good analogy, man.
That's pretty much it, man. Yeah. No, I can't wait. I can't wait, and I can't wait for today's show. Like as always. We have some really incredible people on this show to give us the behind the scenes, and get to know the humanness and the no bullshit basically behind independent watchmakers and masters and companies and heads of companies and everyone from soup to nuts, from A to Z, to learn really what independent watchmaking is and to educate and inform collectors and watchmakers into insight that we wouldn't normally have access to. So,
this is it, absolutely, and tonight this is no exception, because although this is a brand that is established in 2006, as I say, and it's been a very what would you say, a diverse portfolio of watches. They're one of those brands that I think, and I mentioned to Albert, who's our guest, I mentioned to him a little earlier, that it's a company that does things in its own way, and they have built up a loyal, almost cult following, and with their watches they're beautiful, they're distinctive and distinguished, and that's Zeitwinkel. So will we go across and say hello to Mr. Albert Edelmann?
Hello.
How are you?
Very good, thank you. How are you? Hello.
Nice to have you on, Albert.
As we say here, if I was any better, I would burst. So we're all good. We're all good.
Yeah.
So yes, Albert, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. Well, it's we want to explore as everybody that we can talk with, and to find out a little bit about what makes them tick and what what their story is essentially. And so it's great to welcome Zeitwinkel. And
thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for coming on, Albert. We greatly appreciate it. I know we were chatting a little bit before we came on here, and you were showing us your incredible facilities and behind the scenes. And I happened to notice, you had a recent delivery of a new kern. And so if you could kind of just fill us in on how you're structured. I know you're in Germany, and assembly and manufacture is done in Switzerland. So for those who don't know, can you just bring us up to date really quick?
Yeah, and really quick is difficult with me because I tend to talk too long. But Zeitwinkel was, which means time angle, was founded in 2006 by a group of 4 friends, and then a 5th joined later on. And we have 3 that show their faces, and 1 female and 1 male that are happy to work in the background. And most of us, 4 out of the 5, are from the southwestern part of Germany. But we decided early on to start the production and actually the whole watch company in Switzerland. So it's a Swiss company. Everything is Swiss. The only thing that's not really original are the founders. And that is us.
Okay.
That's a nice angle, all right.
That was good.
A nice wrinkle to be coming in on there, like, yeah. So,
so why did you all get, when you got together? I probably know the answer to this, but tell the people why did you decide? Okay, we have to do all the manufacturing, and our facility has to be in Switzerland.
Well, that was basically a path of logic. One of us, Peter, who is the most experienced of us in watchmaking, who has started in the watch industry in 97, was basically the one that introduced me to watchmaking and to the industry. And we came to a point where we saw that a lot is great, but a lot is also not how we would do it. So at the time, around 2005, 2006, a lot of watches were basically portable ETA movements put into, let's say, Far Eastern Swiss cases with other components being made in the outer eastern edge of Switzerland. And then total value, I don't know, a few hundred francs, sold for 5,000. And we felt that's not quite how it should be. So we started playing the game of how would we do it and what would we do, and what do you have to do to build your own honest watch. And very often with Peter and me, we start thinking about something and playing the game, and then we drop it. But this time we didn't drop it. So we started talking to engineers, we started talking to potential suppliers, to partners, and eventually it became clear this will continue somehow. So we looked at where would we do this. And in Germany, there are basically 2 places where you can do it. One is Pforzheim in Western Germany, and the other one is Glashütte in Eastern Germany. But in both places, we didn't feel we can get the suppliers to actually make the movements and make the components in the area. So then we went to Switzerland, and we basically looked at every major town between Biel and Geneva, and eventually settled on a town that at the time only had one large factory, which is Longines, on the meadow below the town, and otherwise didn't have much industry left from watchmaking. And we rented an empty dial factory, actually. So this used to be the dial factory that made the dials for Patek, and I think also others, and was eventually acquired by Patek. And we started to revive it. Yeah, that's the building. And yeah, and it really grew organically. We started with a small workshop, and it's now so big that we're separating and rearranging, using the pandemic to restructure everything.
Fantastic. that's really encouraging to hear, because during the pandemic, there's been a lot of obvious disruption and upheaval and turmoil, and it's good to know that you're actually you're implementing a new wing, aren't you? A new facility within your premises there, then, yeah.
Yes, we. What you see on the left is currently becoming the machine wing, because we had some machines close to the assembly, and we didn't do to continue that. And we have new, used, and a lot of old machines that are now in a part of the workshop. So we decided to renovate that, and it was every crisis also has some opportunities.
Yeah.
And it was actually quite good that hardly anybody was in the workshop, so we could tear everything out, put new lights in, a new door and all that. And it's now being rebuilt into the machine wing. And we will be able to make even more components in-house, especially for bespoke watches, prototyping, small components.
So in the new machine room, I know we were looking through some pictures where you loaded in the kern and there's your Shaolins. Did you have to hire a full-time CNC programmer, CAD/CAM, and all that, or is there someone that's one of your watchmakers that runs that? How are you structuring all that?
No, it's actually one of the watchmakers that runs that and that operates the machines. A lot of here is basically autodidactic, but there are a lot of these old machines that require special skills. It's not like you take out the manual and you have the technician come by and everything works. So the machine you're showing here is for making screws, for example. It's a Schäublin 102 with a special NC configuration, and it takes a while to actually make a screw on that you can use. But once you know how to do it, you can make your screws in-house, from the smallest ones to rather big screws.
Yeah, but what I was specifically asking was for the people that are very interested in CNC. A lot of independent watchmakers who tune in here, we either build our own CNC machines, or obviously most independents can't go out and afford a kern. So usually when people do have one, they have to hire on a yearly salary, a full-time person to program the kern and cam and all that. Are you at this time doing that, or how are you going about doing that?
No, actually, at the moment we do it in-house with one of the watchmakers, but that is certainly part of a hopeful expansion that we're planning for the next 2 years, when we hope to add more watchmakers and to add more staff, so we can then also separate the assembly of movements, assembly of watches, and the operation of machines, and also planning.
So you honestly trust one of your watchmakers to run that kern?
Yeah.
No, I'm messing around. Yeah,
no, I could do it, but then it would probably break within 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You're trusting one of your, hey, buddy, yeah, I can run that red machine. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. No, it's a very complicated and precise machine. Those who are watching, there's CNC machines. You might think of a Haas or whatever you think if you don't really know. But in watchmaking, we have very specialized machines that have to be temperature controlled. And because our tolerances are within microns, and those microns have to stay within whatever temperature the room is, and from day to day to day to day. And kern is at the top of the top of the top of the top of the top. So someone to have a kern is serious business here. So it's very interesting, man. You're just like, it sounds like you're exploding already, and that's wonderful, And to do that on such a small scale, and during the pandemic, like Johnny was saying. I'm building here as well. I've moved my entire workshop and been down for almost 5 months, coming down and coming back up and doing all the construction here. So time to be utilized. Sometimes when a bad thing happens, good things, come from that, as we all start to come out of this. So we wish you all the luck in the world going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think the fact that this is going to be your 15th year then. Zeitwinkel. And so I think for a lot of brands, it's getting over that first 4 years, 5 years, even maybe 6, to establish and to mature, that you're able to stand on your own 2 feet and start doing these developments of, as you say, increasingly in-house manufacture. And I was talking to Peter yesterday. He was telling me that, yep, the setup is there to manufacture your movements pretty much entirely in-house. So it's very encouraging to hear that your brand has endured those initial years and are now, as you say, restructuring.
But what's interesting is what's fueled Albert, which was kind of like a heavy metal kind of thing. He just pissed off that people, what I call movement stuffing. Okay, somebody makes a dial and buys an ETA movement and buys a Chinese case and some Chinese glass, and they put it together and they put on Instagram, I'm a watchmaker, or I'm a new brand. And that was going on back then, right, Albert? For everywhere, right? It's smoke and mirrors. It's snake oil as far as I'm concerned. As a watchmaker myself, it's bullshit, right? And eventually, you just get pissed off. And some people are watchmakers and get pissed off and say, "Hey, wait a minute, I can do a lot better than that. Let me buy some vintage chronographs that are almost impossible to find back then. I know a lot of my friends did that." And some are still doing that today. Let me rebuild them. Let me see if I can find 20 of them that were in parts boxes, never assembled. And at least that next level, right, Albert? It's not an ETA movement, and I'm not movement stuffing. Let me rebuild it. Let me modify that. Okay, we have a lot of independents that are doing that now, adding their own complications to vintage EBOS that they're finding still to this day. I don't know how they find them. I don't know. That's another whole other story. But you took it a level further. You got so pissed off. You said, I just want to make my own, timepiece the right way. And you're not a watchmaker. So what we're trying to show other people is this can be done through struggles, through perseverance, intelligence, a group of banded together, right? And a lot of stupidity as well, right? Stepping out on a ledge, right? We're all a little bit stupid, but that's what entrepreneurship is, right?
Yeah, it's persistence, I think. It's not that we decided we have to have our own movements. We just, at every turn of the road, we say, okay, do we go left or right? And if we want to do this right, it at some point came to our own movement. And then we looked at what means our own movement. Does it mean we go to a supplier that sells own movements, or do we actually make an own movement that doesn't look like anything else in the market? And it was at the end was persistence, because it all looks good in the manual, but that's about 20% of it, I would say.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, I have to say just at this point that there are a lot of young watchmakers that do begin their careers working with ETA movements, and maybe not even ETA movements, maybe Miyota movements from Japan or something like that. But through those movements, they discover their own talent for developing. And I think so. I wouldn't be belittling somebody for starting out with ETA or with Miyota or NH35 or something like that.
No. What we touched upon, Johnny, is it's actually what I was trying to say was that's awesome. People add their own bridges and their own complications to our watchmakers. But back then, when Albert was talking about the back then in the Wayback Machine, there was a lot of companies that they're not here today. They're just smoke and mirrors, just out for money. There was no passion there. They were movement stuffing. So, none of us wanted to fall into that trap.
Okay, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's about honesty. I think it's quite honest to take an ETA movement, Miyota movement, maybe even a Seagull movement, and build a watch from that, a watch that you like and where you add some personal touch. But don't call it a 5,000 Swiss franc watch that is super exclusive and super special. It's if you can make an expression of your own art, if you can make an expression of your own personality, that's perfect. And it doesn't matter what movement is in there.
Yeah,
it's just if you claim you have something very expensive because you have a brand name, that's not necessarily honest.
I think having a movement that is either bespoke, it's proprietary from maybe you've worked with another movement maker or something. They're all different levels of how you source your movements. But the grail, really, the destination for a company like yours was to have your own in-house, fully equipped, fully capable atelier to produce your own movements, which is, you don't get a higher mark than that, really, and so I'm just trying to explain the different levels of how movements are central, or what relevance that has to different watches. So what you're doing is on the top shelf, the top level, manufacturing your own movement, designing, developing, as you say, prototyping. And so, yep. I have spoken more than I normally would in an entire show.
There you go.
Show it out again there, Albert. Talk us through it.
Yeah, the camera is not really suitable for macro.
Yeah, well, I can. That is the date.
Yeah, that's the base caliber, and what we decided early on too was that we wanted the characteristic non-Swiss 3/4 plate here. Sorry.
Yeah, here I can actually show it here. Look, there you go.
That looks even better. And then I think what is very special about this movement is it's very sturdy. So we didn't want any flimsy stamped stuff. And it's also made of Maishore, or German silver. So the blades and bridges are German silver. And we had 3 reasons to do that. One is aesthetics, because it just looks very nice and it ages very nicely. It's a very warm color. The second one, it adds sturdiness. It's quite robust. And the third one is it's not very forgiving. So we don't coat this in any way. We leave it raw. And any scratch you have on there, any problem in the decoration, sometimes you can fix it, but most of the time you can stop a table from wobbling with it.
That's awesome.
It'd be a very expensive table support. So it would.
But unfortunately, it's the same with the handmade hands. Sometimes if a window opens and a broken hand flies out, you can see a cursing watchmaker come out of the building and either smoke or walk around the building and start the same thing again next day.
Wow. That's an excellent story. And I have another image of the same movement. It's the 102, isn't it?
No, that's actually the 103, the large date movement. That's the patented large date mechanism.
Okay. Oh, yes. I should have known by the date wheel there at the side, and we have the dial side of that as well. Mm-hmm. And so even here, the finishing, there's something about the perlage that is it's small scales of perlage, isn't it? It's more difficult to do, yeah?
Yeah, it's well, first of all, you will, unless you have the transparent dial version, you will never see this.
Yes.
This is a perlage on the dial side of the movement, and what has become an industry standard is to do this a little wider and not put that much time into it, because once you've established a brand, you can get a little sloppier. But we decided not to do that and to really stick with the way we did it from the beginning. So this is a very small perlage.
Yeah, the movement itself, the 103, that's developed in-house and manufactured in-house then?
Yeah, what we did was we started out with, we had the idea of how the movement should work, what it should do, what it should have at which position, but we had partners in translating that idea into reality.
Yeah.
And on the movement side, there was a group around an engineer called Laurent Bess. I think you.
Yes, indeed.
You know who he is, and he did the initial construction with us. But then his company, in the first of many crises since, went into insolvency, I think in 2008 or 9. I don't really remember.
Yeah.
And so we had to finish the whole process. We don't make every component in-house all the time. We work with partners around the area, because for some components, it just doesn't make sense to go into large quantities. So obviously, if you have to make 100 of a certain component, it's at the border of where you could still make it. But if you have other components to make, we have a few partners that work together with us, and they're all in the area. And I'm counting. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So again, this is a common story that we hear. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but is that you're in the middle of research and development, and the company goes insolvent, or that person can no longer help you, or goes on to a bigger project. This happens a lot in independent watchmaking, because our quantities are small, which means there's bigger fish out there, and sometimes it's insolvency, sometimes it's another problem. So this is another really big problem we keep hearing the same stories from. So if we could just backtrack 1 second, just for a minute or two, how did you dig yourself out of that hole? Because I know, I mean, from myself, I developed my own movements, and I've developed for other larger companies. Taking on somebody else's crap in the middle of something is harder than starting from scratch. You know, you get handed something. That person is usually a very special individual to backtrack and do that. And in addition, you pulled yourself through that hard times. Can you just tell us a little about that struggle?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Laurent was still there, but he had some other problems that kept him busy. And we were in 2008, there was the financial crisis. And before that, there were some suppliers, let's say a supplier of watch hands, which we met at Basel World. And they looked at us, they looked up and down, gave us a box of chocolate and said, well, we won't work with you. Half a year later, in the financial crisis, they called us and asked whether we wanted any watch hands, which at the time we didn't. And there were other factories that didn't only have bigger fish out there, they were basically under a whale. And there are 2 or 3 big whales in the watch industry. If they call and say, okay, I put this order in, only if you push everybody else out, that tends to happen. And we had supply partners that wouldn't talk to us. And all of a sudden in 2008, their major customers told them, we won't be ordering anything for at least half a year, more likely a year, because we have stock for what is normally half a year. So we had to pull ourselves out of this with our own watchmakers. And we went through a lot of trial and error. And what we also had to find out is that you have to be extremely careful with quality. So you might have a supply partner that has a very good reputation. You still have to be extremely careful and check everything, because humans make mistakes. And especially if there's a lot of pressure on the cooker, quality goes out that shouldn't go out. And I can only speak for us. We couldn't accept it. You know, we had to give some back, and then it was not accepted. So I think that there's a lot of small print in the whole process that makes it all interesting on paper, but very, very difficult in real life.
See, Johnny, the struggle is real. See, Albert, this is what we try to explain to collectors, because they do think sometimes how easy things seem, because they just literally hold a watch and hear a quick story of all the shininess, you know. And me and Johnny like to show them that there's a struggle in so many different avenues to manufacture a movement. It's not so easy to make your own movement. It's why you hear people say it took 7 years or 10 years or 12 years. It's not just how long it took, but it is stories like these that we hear often of the struggle. And some people can't get through that struggle and those trying times. And it's not easy. And then you got to know, like you just said, right? It's something I don't even think we might have talked about, because we're always talking about, like someone like myself, a one-man show, independent, how I'm checking every part, but I'm manufacturing every part. They don't know that even when you buy from someone else, oh, I get a nice box full of, I got 30, 40, 50 third wheels or a pinion or whatever it is. You don't just take it out of the box, pop it into the watch. And Albert has just told all of you, it's a struggle. Out of those 30, maybe none of them are good. They made a mistake. None of them. Maybe 5 are good. Maybe 1 is good, right? The struggle is real, people. So when you hear about the stories behind all these stories, it gets quite interesting, and it's as if you're a business-minded person, you can relate in any industry that you're in if you're an entrepreneur, for sure. But it just keeps going because there's many parts to it.
We had many discussions about the value of having a known movement, and I think our perspective has shifted from the value of a known movement to the value of micro knowledge. The movement, it exists on paper. I could show you the drawings and you, Dan, could build it. But if you gave it to somebody to manufacture it, they would fail. Mm-hmm. It's actually the micro knowledge around the processes, how to touch this, what to do with that before you take the next step, micro processes, how to handle certain suppliers. So somebody brought up a 3-star Michelin restaurant recently where they said they all published the recipes. You can cook all of that at home, but it will never taste like in the restaurant. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the watchmakers come in. And over the last 15 years, my admiration for them has grown tremendously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think over the last 15 years, the watch industry has evolved tremendously as well. And that, 15 years ago, Dan, you will know because you were in the first 4 or 5 years of your own watchmaking career, that it wasn't a popular career choice for young people. But now you're definitely seeing, I look at the people that we've spoken to or that we're seeing coming along now, so many young people here to carry the candle, carry the flag forward for another generation.
That's why the correlation between my past, entrepreneurship in music and what I had to go through hurdles to get that kind of music, through to part of the mainstream, and I mean to the point where now it's playing with NASA on planet Mars. It's not easy, and that's part of what's cool about watchmaking is anyone can't do it. You can't just say I want to start a watch company. I have $100 million in the bank. It sounds easy, but even for those people, it's a struggle all along the way. Even if you're not a watchmaker, it's very interesting and it's very intricate. And there's a lot of personalities you have to deal with and a lot of secrets. And the stories, we hear from everyone we interview is so intriguing. So intriguing. Watchmaking, it just blows my mind every day.
But the personality thing swings both ways. You do have some characters that I would say are individuals in not necessarily the most positive way, but there are, and I would think more in other industries, a lot of individuals that are just not only great watchmakers, but they go so much more beyond that and that develop ideas, that develop solutions that go beyond a mere job. And I think what we've seen in the last 10 years alone in new watch companies and new watchmakers that are recognized out there, also thanks to social media, that's amazing. I don't think you find that in many industries.
No, it's passion. Like with music, it's the same thing. We could be, in your room practicing 10, 12 hours a day. When you finally hit the stage, it's your time to explode. But that ride along in that tour bus is not just about you. Okay, this is my experience. Is about what band am I playing with? When I'm at a festival and there's a 3-day festival and there's 60 bands over those 3 days, you become intertwined with all those personalities and all those people and what they play like, and you end up on the dude's tour bus in the back and having a chance to jam with him and no one even knows about. And it's just that passion. It's the same. It's the same for watchmaking. I have the same passion I did for my instrument as I do, what I do. That's why. What I do here is different. What I've done for other companies is different, and my complications are different. The way I just do things easy, right, and just put out a timepiece and just make it happen, and go to the bank and. But that's not it. That's not the real independent watchmakers. It's keeping to break the barriers, break new ways, help other people. Things like me and Johnny are doing here. Helping other people into insight into really what the hell goes on with people like you. The struggle we're talking about right here was real. You know, that your company could have been crushed right there, right?
Oh, many times. we hit the wall many times, but we stood up again. But I think you mentioned an important point, and that is a network of people that all have their own interest, of course, but that work together. And there are so many great cooperations, so much transfer of knowledge, and it's always give and take, of course.
Yeah.
But if somebody has found a great supplier for, let's say, dials, they share, and you share back. And I think that is to the benefit of not only the product, but of the customer at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all increasing the quality and, or perhaps not increasing, but refining the quality and so maybe using the best experts for a certain project to really get that result that you're looking for. And so, yeah, it's very, very encouraging.
So where did you go from there? We can fast forward now. So
so it took us about 4 years to have watches that actually could be called watches, and we then took a few turns in the road we could have done without, but we started out at Basel World, and we were actually quite successful in getting dealers for our watches in various countries. It was only after a few years that we found out we don't want to be in just any store, because after the financial crisis, you had the large groups putting a lot more pressure on the independent retailers and also on the retailer chains. So at the end of the day, you're a small, very minuscule part of what they sell, and you have the large companies that send them merchandise for $1 million a month, and they have to sell it before the bank calls, and that just didn't work out. So in 2014, 2015, we decided to keep but a few of these dealer partners, the ones we would call friends, and the ones where we think they understand what independent watchmaking is about, and we rebooted. We started to market the watches independently. For the reason that we, as the manufacturers, as the ones that conceive the watches, can explain what they are about and how they are made.
Yeah.
And B, it's a margin game. The retailers, at least at the time, had margin expectations that would first and foremost allow them to give, 15%, 20% rebate to somebody who came into the store. And that's not what we're about. We're not about rebates. We're not about pricing something so you can give a rebate. It's not what our watchmakers work for.
It's not very Swiss, is it? Everything is calculated in to a certain price, and it's not really designed to be discounted, is it?
A lot nowadays is designed to be discounted. If you look at the brand strategies of the large groups, and let's not go into that, but
in independent watchmaking, it's
in independent watchmaking, no, it doesn't make sense.
I often find that some of the independent watchmakers don't actually charge enough, and we've had a couple of young people on, Dan, who we've wondered, how the hell are you doing this? And so you need to be aware of their cost.
They don't value their worth. They don't value their worth.
You got it, man.
In the beginning, usually a lot of young companies do that too, and then, but I think especially the manual labor. But in addition, they're discounting your watches. Let's look at it twofold. They're discounting the name of your brand and what you represent. And in addition to that, then they're taking their fees. Right. So by that time comes along, does it really represent you in a time where, we have this, we have connection to people through social media, and you have your own television channel on YouTube if you'd like to utilize that. There's so many ways to get the word out now as opposed to 20 years, 25 years ago, when it was, the inception of real independent watchmaking, where you had to put an ad in a magazine and come up with cash, tens of thousands of dollars to get the word out. You can actually do it yourself with a small team of people.
Yes, and then that's what we're doing. And I think the downside of our product strategy is that we don't come out with a new watch every 6 months. The PR industry basically works on, you have something new, show it. Doesn't matter whether you ever sell it, just show something new half a year later. And that's, again, not how we build watches. And that's one of the reasons why we somewhat fly under the radar. But it's getting better. It's a persistence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Not because it's March.
How do you think we're going to solve the problem for independent watchmaking, Albert? Where there are many people still that need to feel they want to touch it, the tangible aspect of it. Because I do get emails like that, and a lot of us who are in like my game, we don't produce enough to be able to have even one sitting in a store. They're gobbled up, 4 or 5 years in advance of orders kind of thing. But some people I would take it if I could just touch it. And I always tell my friends, like, that first prototype you build, dude, do not sell it. Put it on your wrist. For us, what we do here, because there it is. There's your tangible. So when we go to a show, a watch show, they can at least touch it. But beyond that, it becomes a real difficulty for this generation of independent watchmakers at all levels. So how do you think? How do you solve that? How do you see the future of that kind of aspect of direct marketing?
Well, we have three. We're handling that for the moment, and it might change again in the future. But one is we have customers visiting us in Switzerland when possible. At the moment, it's not possible. But we have people who come to the atelier. They look around. They get to see everything. They get to talk to watchmakers. They get to look at the products. The second one is we, again, after the pandemic, do tours where we go to certain areas of Europe and meet with people who want to take a look at the watches. And I think what we will see increasingly, which has started in recent years, are events that are mostly independent watchmakers and that are for watch enthusiasts rather than for dealers. Like the Watchmakers Club in London. Johnny, you might have heard about that, where companies like Fears or Garrick or Patrick Sjogren, they exhibit, and we have enthusiasts come by and they play with the watches. A lot of watchmakers come by too, but it's actually hands-on. It's very honest, I think.
I agree. We're in a whole, the whole world's kind of come out of this pandemic in a whole new way, and independent watchmaking as well. And I wholeheartedly believe what you just said can be expanded, should be expanded to all countries, and let direct marketing be, because that's what independence is, right?
I think something
that's what it stands for.
Something like the Watchmakers Club is a fantastic platform for independent watchmaking, because independent watchmakers and watchmakers have for 10 years struggled to find, how the hell do I sell this watch that I have invested my life into this point to get it across? And yes, you can go and you can be a 10 in some little dark corner of Hall 2.1 in the Basel Messe or somewhere like that there, and you're just not reaching the right eyes. And because the right eyes are the people who are going to buy these watches. They're not the commentators. They're not the passing high street retailers who are never going to buy your watch.
Look, we're a different breed. We're crazier beyond crazy, and we have lots of insanity screws loose in our brains, which I've had since a child. Because I mean, but if I didn't, then you all wouldn't have the music that I created, right? So it is the same thing. If you look at it in music. When I used to come to your town to play in the old days before the internet, it was a massive event, right? You hungered, you dreamed, you look at pictures before I got there, just like I did to my stars when I went to concerts. And it was that, wow, can I get backstage? And those few people that did and met you and whatnot, it's my story, right? It's me. It's me, because I'm on stage, I'm not fake, I'm real. And I think in independent watchmaking, pushing forward, I think these events will bring a lot of that, because I'll be there. Albert would be there, Johnny would be there, right? You really get that you know, you get to hang with the dude that you possibly would want to purchase a timepiece from and get to know him as a human and the struggles behind that human. That's a huge. That's 95% of what modern day, what all of independent watchmaking is, I think personally, and where it's going.
Yeah, but it's not all retailers are bad. There are also some retailers that actually create a value, and I think that's the point. If you create a value, there's a margin, and like Pietro, John,
Pietro, or Tim at Independent Time. These guys, that's beyond anything. These guys are just, if they could be a watchmaker, they would, they're right in, it's the passion.
Well, I work with Pietro very often, and I know what he has put in. I have been there from the start with Pietro, and I've seen that's 5 years ago. And man, the commitment and unwavering dedication and effort that he's put in, it just demonstrates what you need to, the stuff that you need, the cojones that you need to make it happen, And so, and also for Tim, also for Laurent Picciotto in Paris, who has been a great advocate and champion of independent watchmaking. So you get the right retailer who understands what independent watchmaking is about, and that it is an art form that needs to be preserved, cultivated and nurtured and brought forward to allow it to be sustainable. So the right partner, you got it, my friend. It's critical.
Throw up one of Albert's timepieces, Johnny, just so everyone can see something.
We can do that indeed.
Beyond the movement,
Yeah. The 181.
Yes, that's the base movement, and we have that in 3 configurations: with date, without date, central, and decentral second. And this is obviously the decentral second version in 42.5 millimeters.
Nice.
Beautiful. Just a lovely, crisp, clean, austere, a lovely presentation with it. And that's the thing about some of these pieces. They're not jumping out at you, but the detail that goes in and the thought and consideration that goes into the creation of the watch, it's beautiful. I've been studying these over the last week. You'll not be surprised to know, Albert. And but that's the 181. 181 degrees. What is the degree symbol? All of your collections are defined by a degree. What is that?
Well, Zeitwinkel is time angle, the angle that defines the true time. And one important thing you have to know about the area where Saint-Imier is in Switzerland, that's the Jura, a range of mountains shared between Switzerland and France. And apart from cheese, chocolate, and the usual stuff, in Switzerland, there's one special thing there, and that's absinthe. Absinthe. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you have enough of that after a day in the machine room and up to your boots in movement parts, you come up with product names like 181 degrees.
I love that. I actually am a very firm believer that absinthe has a role to play in watchmaking, and and I also know that around your part of the world, it's a pretty fine source of absinthe. And next time I'm over, I will be investigating. I'll be doing research on that subject, I hope.
we will show you some of it, most of it legal.
Most of it legal. I like that.
John's research and development.
Yeah, and I think the degrees also show are the result of another thing that is maybe different than in the traditional watch companies. The 5 characters that are behind the brand are all different. Yes. And I think they complement each other very well. So we have Peter, who's very knowledgeable in watchmaking and who can spend a whole night just trying to figure out how in a CAD program he has to tweak something just a little bit so it looks good in the drawing. and it's about a thousandth of a millimeter in the drawing. He won't continue until it's done. And Max, the one of the other partners, he's a professor for art. He used to be the speaker of the deans of all German art universities, and he's full of crazy ideas. So one of the ideas, Max is in the middle, and that's that photo is, I think, 12 years old. So he used to have hair.
He had to go back trawling because you're actually you don't portray yourselves, you don't project yourselves as individuals on Zeitwinkel. It's all about the brand and not about...
It's all about the product. Yeah, we make watches. We don't make PR stories.
Yeah.
But one thing Max, for example, suggested in the beginning when we had the first movements is that no movement would actually do its first heartbeat without music. So we had a whole while we talked about, always having music on, so the movement would start its life with music and beat to that music for the rest of its life. It proved a little impractical, but we have 100 ideas and we throw 99 of them away, and then
what kind of music? Because this is a question we always ask: if what kind of music you all listen to? Are the watchmakers listening to music? So fill us in right here, I guess. What kind of music was the movement listening to?
We thought about classical music for the movements, and at the moment it's often Polish music because one of our watchmakers is Polish and he listens to Polish music on YouTube. And I would think that some of us like rock, given the age and the loss of hair, mostly the older stuff. But for example, Max, who's close to 70. Well, I didn't say that, just cut that out.
70 degrees, yeah.
Yeah, 70 degrees. His son-in-law is a music producer, and he introduces us to all these cool British bands like Slave or Royal Blood, Larry Pink the Human, and people you might not have heard of, and we listen to that then. Mm-hmm. So it's fairly diverse, but it's mostly non-cheap industrial product.
Yeah,
to put it that way.
Poland is a lot of that.
What's cool is we're always asking people, do you listen to music? Because I've seen that. I've seen all the rooms I've been in Switzerland, working in complication rooms. One person's listening to Barbra Streisand, but there's tons of metalheads. Everywhere. They're listening to Slayer or whatnot, and they're like working on masterpieces, which is really cool for someone like me to watch. But to hear you say that the movement itself needed music, that's a first, and I love it, man.
we don't always pull it through, and we certainly don't mention it to anybody. So because that was one of the reasons why we didn't go official with it, because then we knew somebody would want a specific piece of music to be played, and that wouldn't work out.
Awesome, man.
You can imagine that. I want my watch to be born to and my goodness. Can you imagine what that would be? Well, we're going to find out very soon, aren't we, Dan? Whenever yours is finished.
When I produce my music box watches.
Absolutely.
That's killer, man. That's killer.
Yeah.
Well, your facility looks incredible. The pictures that we've seen so far, where you've come, it's a long time to get where we need to go. We never really get there. Just so you know, it is very much like golf. It's very much like music, what we do in watchmaking, independent watchmaking. Mm-hmm. It's entrepreneurship. It's a struggle, and it's a beautiful struggle because it is really so hard. There is so many jobs to do. For if it's a one-person operation or a small 4 or 5 person operation, it's unbelievable what has to be done. And those jobs that are mentioned, say, in George Daniel's books, which I think he says is 34 jobs we have to do, that's way, way long ago. Because I'm looking at, CNC now and Kern and CAD. You have to go to school to learn CAD and CAM. And there's many more jobs that are now in modern day independent watchmaking that are all under the guise of what we have to do to produce our own stuff and keep it in-house, which is truly, in-house. And
And it's as simple as it is. Very often we cannot afford any external service providers. Mm-hmm. So if you want one photo taken, and I saw my friend Martin is here, he's an exception, he's an excellent photographer, but most of the photography I'm doing myself.
Right.
And that means I have to learn how to not have a reflection, how to still have a reflection on the watch hands, and so on and so on. It's nights spent just on seemingly unimportant stuff like that.
But again, I think me and Johnny, I guess maybe we're some of the first people to discuss this, that because everyone keeps, buying the George Daniels book and starting their first tour beyond, and I've got to learn 34 jobs. We're way past that now. You just had to learn how to be a photographer, because after we make the parts, right, we either have to learn how to be a videographer, which we do because we have to have a YouTube channel, right? Or you got to hire somebody. But who has the money to do that? If you're independent, you're trying to save every penny because maybe you can afford a better machine or whatever it may be. So now we're videographers, we're professional photographers, we're logo makers, which is a business in itself. I mean, I could keep going, Johnny, right? It really is a lot more than 34 jobs now, especially for someone who's, trying to
also figure in your social media marketing and
you're a PR person.
Everything they got there, and even understanding social media is another thing. It's okay.
You're an accountant, right? If there's anything left in the bank account, whatever. Right? Well, you have to be an accountant to all the money that you hopefully didn't borrow. I have to pay back. But it's a whole new time now. I know we're laughing about it, but it truly is way more than 34 professions.
Yeah.
But then it's fun. It's very hard work, and you run into a post or a wall at least once a day. But it's really fun because, and that's what I admire about watchmakers. At the end of the day, they have something they built. There might be 5 of them on the floor that didn't make it, but there's one that they made.
Oh, I got a pile, no more than 5. I got piles of parts saved up. But when I can travel, as we talked about, that I can bring to people and show them the suffering. This is just the ratchet wheel, and it's a pile that was made wrong. This shit ain't easy, bro. It's just not easy. It's not for the faint-hearted. But yes, the perseverance is like any other art, be it music or art or whatever, or making clay pots or blowing glass like the old in our past times, whatever it may be. It is truly art at this point in independent watchmaking, and that's what we have to let people know. The struggle is beautiful and the struggle is real.
And this is the 273. Degree, if I'm correct, with hand finished hands, yes.
Yes, those are actually the 273, and we found out by coincidence recently that there was a simulation by a British university how many people would survive a zombie apocalypse. And it was a scenario with or without an island. And without an island, it was 181 people. And you just saw the 181 degrees. Yeah. And with an island where some people could hide, it was 273. And this is the 273 degrees, which is a coincidence. But
from zombie apocalypse then, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, this watch protects from zombies, obviously. But seriously, the watch hands on this are made by hand from a piece of steel. We start out with a sheet metal, and then they are cut, they are filed by hand. In the end, they are blued, and that's the point in time where you might have broken the tip off, or where you find out there were very, very small inclusions in the steel that you couldn't see before bluing, but that are visible, and then you throw the whole thing out, you go in front of the building, you pet the dog, you smoke, and you go in and start another day of making watch hands, unfortunately.
It's amazing the processes involved and the time involved as well. There's the bluing of the hands, and so that's just the hands. That's one person's day is creating those hands for the 273 with the handmade hands, which we were just looking at there. And these are really, really handsome watches, Dan. Do you know? And it strikes me that there are maybe don't get all the attention that they deserve. Would that be fair to say, Albert?
Well, I'm somewhat biased, but yeah, I would tend to agree, and it's because we don't make any shortcuts in watchmaking, and we didn't want to make any shortcuts in promoting the watches. So we didn't want to buy an old name of some watchmaker where there was only a 200-year hiatus in the company history. And we didn't want to come up with some PR stories that didn't make sense, but would get us articles printed. Yeah. So we're really also doing the...
Okay, a little bit of a break there. Go ahead, Albert.
That was the explanation why maybe we could have drummed a little louder, but we felt that we shouldn't.
Yeah, well, I have described you as very much a 21st century watch manufacturing company. So it's not, as you say, the revival of an existing name or a historic name or one with a legacy associated with it. So it's a 21st century watch brand that is creating these pieces and creating them in-house. And so a very convincing alternative to some of the older brands that have been playing that same territory that you are. And so then there's the 273 Sapphire, which is a beautiful one.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also a process which is quite interesting, because the indices and the logo on there, for example, or the scale for the power reserve, that is grown by a special process on the sapphire glass called LIGA. Yeah, it's a well, I think there's electrolysis involved, and Peter would be able to explain this in great detail. But this is not just a piece of glass. It's a sapphire that is smoked, and then there's a very special process to make the appliques and the numerals and the logo on there. And again, if something doesn't work out, because that is done at the end of the process, you have to open the window again.
So it would be worth standing outside the building in Saint-Imier if there's a catch, maybe a watch falling out, for example, or is that? No,
we actually can't see it because there's a big pile of components in front of it.
My goodness. And so this is deconstructed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the large date module with the patented large date display taken apart with a rubber strap and the case on top. And then you see the upper left, the 3/4 plate. Those are all the German silver plates and bridges that you see here. The dial, the date discs, the barrel, mainspring.
Yeah.
And just making the pins that go into this ring that's below the case. We have a new addition now. It's a Peterman P3 machine that can make high precision pins. Okay. Very small, very thin, but they have to be super exact, because if you end up with a 32nd of a month, you know that something's wrong. So it has to be super precise and super well done when you put the pins into the ring. Just for that, you have to make your own tools and brackets, and we make, obviously, as Dan will be able to tell you, you have to make a lot of stuff that never shows up in a watch. Mm-hmm. You just make components that are only used to make components or to hold something. Or to enable something.
Because that is one of the Zeitwinkel mantras, is that you're going to finish every component, even whether it will ever be visible to the owner or not. It's all finished to that high standard. I am sure that the machine that you're talking about is in here somewhere. I'm just not.
No,
sure.
it's not yet. It's not yet in the photos. I have to say I haven't seen it myself yet. But we will take some photos of it and put.
Peterman made a lot of machines. Like I think we had Christian Lass on. He has some of his case making and pin making machines. Peterman and before the era of CNC for semi-mass production, let's say, it takes a long time to set up whatever that part is that you're going to make. But once you do that setup, that giant machine, it's just But again, it has to be done within a few microns, so it's repeatable. And we need specialized machines. And luckily, Albert, in this era now, as opposed to when I started way back, we couldn't have that Shaolin. We couldn't find a used P3 because they were still being used in industry. CNC machines were not, being used. It was still stamping machines. And luckily now for independent watchmaking and the birth of this next level, we're able to find these machines and restore them, some of them at least, or find 2 or 3 of them and make one out of them. And that is what's birthing this next level of independent watchmaking, that we can get these machines. Because back then you had to buy a new one, and who could afford that being independent? It was an impossibility. And that's what's really cool now, Now what's out of reach for us now is like what you just put in, like you put a kern in, that's most watchmakers' dreams is to someday, be able to afford that and step up their game kind of thing if they'd like to produce, more than a few pieces a year.
Yeah, but I think we're also preserving a heritage. All of these machines are quite old and they work still very, very well. And I would say they're better made than most modern machines.
Absolutely.
I think there's nothing wrong if you have the space and you find a used machine that you can afford or somehow get your hands on to make certain components on those old machines. I think it's a wonderful tradition, and it's the actual craft. We could order pins elsewhere all the time.
Mm-hmm. The machines I've restored here, they're as precise once done as the day they rolled off their assembly line. I mean, I have one here that my straight line guilloche machine that I'm about to restore it. I just finally found from the late 1800s, and when I'm done with that, it'll just keep going on, and it'll be passed on for forever and ever, as far as I'm concerned. They just keep going on. John, put up Jack's question there. That's a good one.
Yeah, it is indeed. So Jack's question is, knowing what you do now, that maybe you would like to have known from the start, what advice, if any, would you give to an upcoming independent watchmaker?
Well, it's probably not one advice. I would say it's certainly, it all takes a lot of time, and you have to make sure you have the stamina to pull it through. It will work out fine, but not at the date you have put into the business plan. Yeah. Ignore that, add a year or two. It's also, I think, very, very valuable to be true to yourself. Don't let others pull you left or right. And if you only do this, you will be more successful. Listen to advice. Talk to a lot of people. But if you have an idea and you think you will be successful with that idea, stick with it. Just make sure it's whatever comes out as a product is an honest product and not something that will sell because you made it or you have a crowdfunding campaign that was very successful, stuff like that. It's about the product and about honesty, I would say, at the end of the day.
There's probably so many different angles or so many different answers to that question, depending on who is being asked that, because there's a lot of different routes into watchmaking. People who have discovered it. I had a comment during the week, Dan, on our YouTube post of our episode last week. Somebody saying, "Look, I'm 64. How do I get started in this?" And so people come at it from all different angles. And but I think what you said, Albert, and I mentioned it to you before we started, that what Zeitwinkel have done, they haven't followed anybody else's path. You have taken the long way and being very particular about where you source your components for at the start, that your movements had to be, as far as possible, locally sourced, the components, everything out there. And that has evolved over the last 15 years to this amazing building that you guys are working out of nowadays, and where Zeitwinkel is expanding and growing. So, and you took a different route than someone else would have taken, I think is my point.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm saying. You have to go your own way. You have to do what's right. Of course, you make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, and you just have to learn. And that's why I like talking to everybody in the industry, whether it's a watchmaker that's in his third year of watchmaking school. You always go away with some additional knowledge. You always learn, and
every day.
Yeah.
Every day, and that's what's so great about watchmaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think in independent watchmaking, Albert, there is a lot of business involved, and there's a lot of one-man shows that are developing in this next wave, and they're really hungry to learn from someone like you that's been around a long time, going against a lot of brick walls, going against a lot of people telling you, hey, if you don't put your watch in my store, fuck you, you'll never sell a watch in my country or whatever, just like they used to tell me in music, same crap, just keep pushing forward. And they're hungering for that, keep pushing forward. They're hungry to show me just a little bit of some of your struggles and guide me in the business way, because maybe they're not so good at business, they're good at the bench, which is usually the case. Same in music, is why we hire managers, right? Even though we have to give them a huge chunk of what we earn, it's just most people in music, they know their instrument, they know their passion, they're so passionate, right? They want to trust everybody. It's the art brain, and there's a lot of us in watchmaking the same way. So it's really good to hear, from you and other people like you to explain to these other people, some of your stumbling blocks. What kind of, even if you can give them that much that relates to them, it's a wonderful thing that we all share, and give back whatever we can.
Yeah.
That's what me and Johnny are trying to do here,
Thank you very much. That's
so, and it's kind of day, So yeah, there's we haven't even got through all. There's a couple of nice pieces that I wanted to look at as well, and that's the family of Zeitwinkel. So it's a very mature and sophisticated collection, I would say, and so it's sporty, and it's stainless steel, and it's not exotic metals. Is that the area that you're focusing on there, or what?
I think one of the other lessons learned here is you can be too early. So we said from the beginning we will not make women's watches. That's the hot topic very recently on Instagram, because we said we make watches. We make them in different sizes, 39 and 42.5, but we don't make women's watches. Yeah. And or men's watches for that matter. We just make watches. And also we said we don't want to make a watch valuable just because we add a gold case. So when we started out, you had certain brands that had an external service provider make a super complicated tourbillon, driven by belts, whatever watch, but that made their money with quartz watches that had a few stones put on them. We never wanted any of that. So the reason we have steel is because we think that's the best value proposition for somebody who wants to appreciate watchmaking. And the other reason is also the reason why we don't have alligator straps, that wherever you dig for gold, it leaves a trace on the environment, and it leaves a negative impact on the local population. We tried Fairmint gold for a while, but frankly, nobody was willing to pay the markup for that. And we also didn't push it very much because we think if you make watches, you make watches. You don't sell gold cases. Mm-hmm. But that's our personal opinion. I mean,
yeah, it's very true and very topical.
I remember, like, people would drop their like Rolex President, on my desk to fix them in the early days or whatnot, and I pick it up, and I'm a little guy, like extra little, and I pick it up and be like, holy crap, dude, why didn't you buy 2 of these? Because by the time you're 80, you're gonna be walking like this, man. I mean, that's a lot of gold, bro. And I truthfully, for me, okay, this is my personal opinion, how I like things. I'm not a gold kind of guy, unless it's an old Patek, but it's not much gold. They're really small, really light. I don't get it for me, And I think the birth of titanium and the ability of certain grades of titanium we have now, specialized grades where we can polish it to look very beautiful, I think is taken over, and it's a viable alternative as well. And other materials as well. We ventured off. That's again independent watchmaking that births all this crap. All these weird materials that no brand would ever venture off into because we need special machines, special tools. They need to shut down, take the time to even try it, right? And they don't have that time. Independent watchmaking is a thrash metal of our industry, right? We take the risks. We don't give a shit. It is what we are. And it's the parallel universe, and that's where I fit in. People always say, like, how could you go from music to watchmaking? And I'm like, you don't understand. Look at the parallels I'm drawing for you. Every time right, Johnny? Every time we do these, the parallels are it's astronomical. It's that same I don't give a shit attitude. Don't tell me what to do. Most of the time, right? You still have to listen somewhere along the lines. Yeah. Same business entrepreneurship, and not to trust everybody. Don't take those big piles of money. The second your first watch comes out and it's on the internet now because there is an internet, and then bam, your email box is full, which happens every time. And then there's the vultures, not the guys that were there at the beginning where you were struggling. Same in music. Right? The guys that said, oh, your music sounds like shit, Spitz sounds like you're flushing the toilet. That's what your shitty music sounds like. Get out of here. We're not still giving you a record deal. But then, when we're packing in 18, 20,000 people a night, all of a sudden, what can we do for you, Dan? We love your music. We were just a little confused back then, It's the same vultures in every entrepreneurship. They're out there. You can't mix heavy metal and rap. It's career suicide. When it's a double platinum album and it's out there, then all of a sudden, whoa, wow, we believe in you. We just weren't sure. Be careful of those suit and tie kind of dudes. Stay on your path is, I think, what I'm saying. I'm not going to put words in Albert's mouth, but just keep going and believe in yourself, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that obviously you have to be able to afford to do that, and I think that's the difficult part probably in starting out as an independent one-man show watchmaker. You need something to support you until you can really sell enough pieces and make enough pieces to live off of that. So I think that would be another advice. Make sure you have something that carries you to the point where you can sell enough watches and make enough watches.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. Do repairs, do whatever you can, and then find that time for your art to shine, and just be careful is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just responding to someone here. Just carry on. So yeah. So yes, where were we? Yes, we're still on the I got distracted there, guys. I beg your pardon. There's a little action going on in the comments there, so we're trying to moderate the comments and be nice and not fall out without anybody. So yeah. Anyway, that's all sorted now. So so what about the future for Zeitwinkel? New wing, a new manufacturing atelier being put together as we speak, and so are there plans or developments? Are there any new models in the in the future?
Well, yeah, we have plenty of ideas. Our partner Max, he keeps talking about a more sporty watch. Ever since we came out with this one, there will be very likely a new version of this one, the Sapphire watch in the next months. We're working on new dial versions for later this year, and a project that will probably only come out next year is a new movement that is a hand wound. Sorry, the light's too strong here. We will try to build a hand wound movement. And the big challenge is obviously you not only have to leave away the winding mechanism, but you have to change the whole architecture here to reposition the crown and to make sure you have a watch that still has a good look and feel, is slimmer than the current model, but that doesn't look like a converted automatic movement.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're doing all of that in-house, and it's on the side, so to speak, of everything else we have to do in the pandemic.
Wow, that's unbelievable. I mean, it's just what you're already creating, and I could see the workshops are expanding to produce is incredible, man. You really
thank you.
Yeah. To do all that, I know it sounds like a long time, Albert. 15 years? But I mean, my timepiece here is like over 7 years in development. You know, someone 3.5, 4 years just for the escapement for one movement. Obviously, there will later on be added complications that I can do, but to make a base movement, to give you an idea how long it can take to what you've done is it's incredible.
Well, it took 4 years for the movement at the end of the day, and. And when we started out, Peter was the pessimist. He said it would take years, and I thought, well, there are movements. I mean, we can build a movement, right? It cannot be that difficult.
Yeah, it is.
It's just so it's very admirable what you do. You pull that through, but you will have something that nobody else will have, and that's you.
You know, the way I look at it is. Nobody once you have the ability to make your main plates and move forward in-house, right? Then nobody can take that away from you. Yeah. You can push forward as an independent. You're not, super reliant on anyone. If you do use a supplier, say for certain items, screws or certain wheels or pinions or setting mechanisms, and that supplier falls away, there is a way out, right? It's the main plate and everything else. I mean, you're home free, and that's the hardest part. So investing in your CNC machines, investing in your kerns, building your own CNC machines if you're an independent, whatever that may be, the ability to make your own main plate that the number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6 is the same as number 1, okay? It's impossible to do by hand, and anyone will tell you that. You can make one, but the second one will be different.
Yeah.
But once you have that ability to do in-house, it's a home run. It's not easy, but it's a home run where you can separate yourself from the herd.
Yes, and I think it's also, again, an expression of your understanding of how a movement should look like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you got a great team. It sounds like everyone is actually still gets along after all these years.
and I think that would be another advice for somebody who starts out. You will test any relationship or friendship. It will be on the private side, and it will also be on the business side, because any problems you run to during the build-up of the business also reflect into your private life, of course. Mm-hmm. But also, we started out as friends, and 15 years later, we're still friends. And we had sessions where we screamed at each other, where we were in the car, and we would stop the car and, did 10 minutes of screaming just to get the energy out over something where, the argument evolved from, this, we should do it like this or that, to, you always say this. But at the end of the day, you get back together and the friendship is stronger. And I think that reflects in your ability to find solutions to problems.
Yeah.
But it's a test for any relationship.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, sometimes this could be a test as well, I can tell you. But
even the people that say I did it alone, they were never alone. There's a behind the scenes. There's somebody. There's somebody, and there's always a struggle in entrepreneurship. That's what this is. That's what independent watchmaking is. It's pure entrepreneurship. You're out on the ledge at all times, no matter what anybody tells you. So get used to living on that ledge and pushing through. And it is really wonderful that you guys have pushed through that and all stayed, friends through it all. And that's beautiful.
Yeah, we do see it. A lot of brands have started out as partnerships with, and that partnership doesn't always last. So,
no, we see that a lot, Albert. In watchmaking, I'm sure you're very aware, but we're also trying to inform others who are collectors how this works. And you see a lot of people through the years, they built a brand up, they built their name up, whatever, and then all of a sudden they're not part of that brand anymore. And the beauty of independent watchmaking, I see again in this next generation, is those people are actually able to come back to their bench as a one-man show and acquire these machines like I have over time, right? Usually it takes 10 to 15 years to rebuild them and find them and fix them up. But there is that ability, because we have the internet now, to be able to, reschool themselves. And even if they've lost everything, get back to the bench and the passion and be an independent watchmaker. And I think that's a lovely thing. That's a lovely thing of our time. It's better than music where you find the guy drunk somewhere, some other country and laying on the street. And he was once in like one of the most famous bands in the world. He didn't have anything to fall back on. At least in watchmaking, you can go up and still, end up back making in-house movements in your house.
Yeah, or if it's very worst, there's always going to be a demand for a good quality watchmaker. But anyway, that's we've digressed again. So listen, it's been wonderful to have you on, Albert.
Thank you very much.
You're at Zeitwinkel, and hopefully to make people aware of this extraordinary brand that, for me, I have, as I said, felt it was somewhere underneath, not getting the attention that it deserved. I'm not particularly for going your own way and doing your own things, but it's been really interesting this evening to hear about the story behind Zeitwinkel and how the three friends came together to create this brand at the start. 4 friends, 5 friends eventually, and how the brand is continuing to grow. And I said, someday I look forward, Dan, to testing absinthe in in one of the labs here in Saint-Imier. And but it's a beautiful building, and
it's a beautiful area too. I've spent some time, obviously, there too. It's really nice.
A really fitting home for a fantastic brand.
Yeah, we'll be infiltrating your facility pretty soon, Albert. It looks like, huh? Right?
You're very welcome. And
excellent.
Let's keep your fingers crossed that the Europeans get their vaccination in order, and we can open the borders again and travel more and meet watch enthusiasts and fellow watchmakers.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest downside of the pandemic at the moment, not being able to sit down with watch enthusiasts and fellow watchmakers.
It is, to share the love. And
100%.
We look forward to that too. So, Albert, before we go, I just want to say, wait for a moment after we've finished, and we'll say our goodbye off air. And but for to everybody who has been followed our story tonight, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, for supporting In the Metal. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Why don't you? And
visit our website too.
Visit that website. It's updated every week. We update the website with the current episode and add another great chapter to our archives. And so we will be back again next week. And we will be stretching the time zones down on this one because we're going to Moscow, my friend. So there's going to have to be a little bit of jiggling about with the time. So that's us. We'll be back next week. So for everyone, thank you so much for joining myself, Dan, and Albert from Zeitwinkel. And we catch you next week. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.